Deconverted Man here. Let's hyper-analyze reality. So, we have to start with some pre-assumptions that this reality that I'm experiencing is in fact real to some extent. And although that might be arbitrary, it's kind of a good place to start. Just assume that this is really real and not just some sort of elaborate holodeck or Matrix or other sort of magical place that's not really real, like the Truman Show or things of that nature. Not just a brain in a vat, but I could be. But there's no reason to think that I am unless I'm given evidence that that's the case. So reality is real, we think. And that's a good place to start as any. Now, I wanted to address reality and hyper-analyze it because this ties into natural language issues and other logical issues as well as philosophy. That if I was to say, well, I could be skeptical that reality is real, that's true. I could be. And hard solipsism is essentially just that. We can't really prove that reality is real, nor could we ever disprove that reality is real. But we know that there are some humans who don't perceive reality the way that the majority of humans do. People in psychiatric wards, for example, by and large, are probably there because their view of reality is skewed. If you think of somebody in a padded room, perhaps, who does not perceive reality the way that you and I do. And so off kilter is their perception of reality that for their own safety and the safety of others, they have to be put in a room with walls that are soft. And that's a scary thought, because how do I know that I'm not in such a room and that all of this is in my brain and that none of this is really real, and etc.? And the answer is, I don't. But I assume that it is real. So, going from that, in a social situation, we presume innocence until guilt is proven. I tell you that I'm called Deconverted Man on YouTube, also Dan Green, and you believe that until guilt is shown that I'm not actually called those things online. Case in point, my stuffed cat Fluffy here will help me to demonstrate my points. Hey, read a book. Thank you, Fluffy. Okay, so this is my stuffed cat Fluffy. Now, what about this statement can we know for sure? Well, first and foremost, we can ascertain that it is in a shape of a cat-like figure. And as far as being stuffed, we can assume, given the squishiness of it, that seems to be the case. It appears to be a plush toy. And as far as being as his name goes, his name could be anything. Maybe I'm lying about that his name is Fluffy. And in fact, even calling him a him is anthropomizing what is essentially an inanimate object into more than just that. And you can also make some guesses about this. This is a very worn animal. So you could probably guess, and you would be right to guess, that I've owned this animal for quite some time, and he's seen a lot of love and a lot of wear and tear over the years. It's odd that we humans can love or feel affection for what is an inanimate object, yet I feel that way for my stuffed cat Fluffy. And he's been with me since I think I was 8 years old, maybe. So he's pretty old. Okay, so we can't know for sure what his name is, or even that he's a he to me. We have to just assume that I'm telling you the truth, that I've named him Fluffy. And we also have to assume that I've owned him. But what reasons would we have to think that I didn't own him? I mean, after all, he is pretty old. It's kind of odd to think that I would go out of my way to buy a used stuffed animal in this condition. It's more likely that I have owned this animal for quite some time. And we assume those things because we associate certain things with how reality works. It doesn't make sense, if you will, that somebody would go and buy a used animal that looks as worn as Fluffy. Come on, man, you're hurting my ego here. Sorry. But somebody could do that, but it's unusual for someone to do that. So the idea that I've owned this for a very long time is more readily acceptable than the idea that I bought this at a garage sale a few weeks ago or something of that nature. Plus, he's been in other videos I've done. But you can say, well, maybe you bought him just for your channel, and you bought him used just to make a point or something. But unless you have evidence that that's true, you can kind of use Occam's razor, and the simplest explanation is that I'm telling the truth until guilt is proven or shown to be. And that is to say, if you found some evidence that said that this wasn't named Fluffy and I didn't consider him a him and I hadn't owned him since the age of 8 or what have you. So a statement like, "This is my stuffed cat Fluffy," is one that we aren't skeptical of. We don't need to be skeptical of it because there's nothing to gain by being skeptical about it, nor is there anything to lose by not being skeptical of it. There's no harm in it. It's a relatively mundane claim to make. Now, if I were to say that Stuffed Cat Fluffy can do magic, that's a little bit different. In fact, it's a lot different, because what is magic? Well, magic is trickery, it's illusion, and the only things that can do trickery or illusion is people, not stuffed animals. So surely, if anything, I would be performing the trickery involved. But what if I meant real magic? That he is in fact magical, that he has some sort of magical ability, and that statement is one that you would be skeptical of immediately and instantly. Why? Well, because we've never seen magic in that sense demonstrated in a controlled situation. We might have seen it. We've seen tricks and magic done on stage, but there's just tricks. That's not really real magic. Real magic, as far as we know, doesn't exist. And if it did exist, we'd be able to demonstrably demonstrate it under controlled conditions. But the fact that we've never been able to do that suggests that it's not really a thing. All it is a trick. There is no real magics. But Stuffed Cat Fluffy does have magical powers. Hold on. I'm getting his magical powers ready. They have to charge. It's complicated. Okay. So, Stuffed Cat Fluffy can go from looking old, really? Yes, really, to looking young again. Ta-da! He looks really young now. Look, he's all super fluffied out, although his nose could use a repair job. And you can see, But this is not the same. is it? It is, but it isn't. And you know that it isn't the identical Fluffy that I held up first, even though I'm not showing you both of him on the screen at the same time. How do you know that? Because of repeated instances of being shown that ordinary everyday objects, just like stuffed animals, are just that. They're not magical, and to assert that they are magical requires a demonstrable demonstration under controlled situations. And because I refuse to show you both on screen at the same time, I can claim that it's just the same Fluffy, even though in fact it's not. And you have every right to be skeptical of the claim that Stuffed Cat Fluffy is magical. Other claims that I could make take on a similar sort of problem. If I claim that I'm magical, or that I can do something beyond the scope of science, immediately I've placed my thing that I'm claiming outside the bounds of testability. I'm essentially saying, you don't get to test this, you just have to believe it. You don't get to see the other Fluffy, you just have to believe that Stuffed Cat Fluffy has magic. So even though I typically don't lie, in this instance I'm utilizing a lie to pretend that Stuffed Cat Fluffy has magical powers, when in fact he doesn't. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Don't ruin my video. This idea that I'm talking about here of hyper-analyzing reality, where we take a simple claim, like this is Stuffed Cat Fluffy, a claim that we all have no real reason to be skeptical of, and then add something that we will be skeptical of to it, like Stuffed Cat Fluffy is magical, and then demonstrate somehow that Stuffed Cat Fluffy has magic, that establishes a level of trust. If you were gullible and you weren't a skeptic, you might fall for the trick that I'm performing. You might think that I was being honest because I made a statement that was honest, and then I followed it by a dishonest statement. Other tricks like this, psychological tricks, include getting your foot in the door tactics, where you ask a question that the person will agree with, and then you ask them another question, and before long, they're agreeing with you without really intending to do so. A trickery magician of sorts, and now I can't recall his name, I disliked him because he did a lotto thing that was total fakery, and he didn't reveal how he really did it. He pretended like it was something more, which is against all the other things that he had done up to that point. But at any rate, he took blank pieces of paper and talked to people, and then I would ask them questions, and where's this, where's that, is that way, oh, how much is this item, oh yeah, okay, 1 2 3 4 5, okay, there you go. And he would get the items with blank pieces of paper about the size of money, and he was able to acquire a number of different items with blank paper. I'm not sure that counts as counterfeiting, but it certainly would be something that I think you would probably get in trouble for. And in this case, he doesn't, because he's running a TV show and he compensates the people and returns their merchandise, etc. He was able to buy a diamond ring with blank pieces of paper because he was able to distract the people. And we've seen things where somebody is wearing one shirt, and then all of a sudden they're wearing another shirt, but you were so focused on them that you didn't even notice the change. They've done experiments where people switch, and sometimes people don't notice it, sometimes people do. They've done all sorts of different things like this. So it is easy to trick people. And when we start to analyze, and as I put it, hyper-analyze reality, we put up a barrier between ourselves and the charlatans of the world who are out there trying to sucker us in. One of the videos I've done, Bob Barker Exposed, gets comments every now and again of the nature that I'm the fraud and I'm the liar and I'm the one that is to blame. I had the latest comment say, nothing you say will convince me. I know that what I dreamed was real, and I know what's happening, and I know that this is true, and you're the fraud, and he's not the false prophet, you are, yada yada yada. Just like, well, you've basically told me that you've decided that nothing's going to change your mind. Okay, I can't do anything with that. It's people who really, really want to believe that the con artist isn't a con artist, even though the con artist has been exposed. And we saw this with Uri Geller and other psychics that were exposed, that people still believe that these people can do something. Why? Well, it's part of that social phenomenon of assuming innocence until guilt is proven, something that we have to do on some level to have any conversation with each other at all. Imagine if every statement I made required a logically coherent argument. This is Stuff Cat Fluffy. Oh yeah? Where's your syllogism for that? I don't even know where to start. Well, he is stuffed, and can you demonstrate that he's stuffed? Well, I'd rather not, because I don't want to open him up, So, he's not really a cat. He's a plush thing that's in the shape of a cat, So you would run into problems if that's how we did things. And so, because of the social phenomenon that we are in many ways required to presume innocence until guilt is proven, this can also lead us to believing in things that aren't so. When I demanded data and good arguments from pro or con feminist stuff, I was told I don't know anything about the topic, which is true, but irrelevant. I want the people that are talking about it to put up data or to shut up, or to put up a good argument or to shut up. That's all. But yet nobody could see my point because it was such an emotionally charged topic. Because for them, it was, I'm on this side and this side is right. I'm on this side and this side is right. And nobody could see the point that I wanted to make. That's confirmation bias. Even we, the skeptics, are not immune to that. Even we, the skeptics, can fall for con artists. Scientists can be tricked by clever magicians. James Randi has demonstrated that. So we need controls. We need good controls for tests, and we need other laboratories to do the test, and we need all of the results to come in together and see if all the data points match. And if they don't, then something somewhere went wrong, and we need to recheck it and maybe recheck it. But for social matters, we don't really need to do any of that, because there's really no harm in thinking that this is Stuff Cat Fluffy. But there is harm in thinking that Stuff Cat Fluffy has magical powers. And when you can understand why there's harm in believing that part, you can be a better skeptic. Until next time, remember, unless and until we have a logically coherent argument, we must continue to. I want to talk about stuff. No, you ruined my thing. I want to talk about. Read a book, people. Read some book. What book? I don't know. That's my saying. I say read a book. Read a book, and you're ruining my end of my video. Read a book. Stop it. What are you doing to the thing? Read a book. I'm gonna debate that creationist cat, and I'm gonna pawn him. I'm coming for you. He didn't want to do a debate with you. I'm not famous enough yet. We'll get more subs. Sub more D Vertiman so that I can debate our creationist cat. Stuffed Cat Fluffy, you really... Did you get into the catnip? Maybe.